chemicals the military may be using, but it is all kinds of marine life. The sounds are not just whales. Most of the footage has been whales. Thais will explain a little bit about these recordings and where they're from. They're not just like some random thing. But again, yes, I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and to let you know that like the main format of this is essentially we're just going to pass the mic to whoever wants to speak next. Okay, we will ask people to be reasonable with how long you want to talk for. Talking like 5 minutes max. If you want to talk again later, give other people a chance and then try again later. Okay, that would be much appreciated. So as many people who want to can get a chance. If you're like me, I'm here to listen mostly. I don't know a lot about the science of the situation and the negative effects that will occur if this testing goes forward closer to shore, here where we live. But I know that some people know a lot, and I know that hearing from them is going to help me write a better public comment. That's one of the main goals of this situation right now is submitting comments. There are paper comment forms on the table over here. There's articles, various news articles. There are also some public statements that have already been submitted on this issue that if you want to read from some people who have already written comments, including our County Board of Supervisors, the Sinkyone Intertribal Council, which is the 10 tribes of Mendocino County, submitted a comment. They were not able to come tonight, but asked me to read from their comments to share with everyone tonight, so that's something I will be doing. And other things we have over here, if you would like to use a laptop to make a comment while you're here tonight, you could do that.
Is there a Navy representative here tonight, or just is this our
No.
sort of thing?
No, after the Navy organized meeting in Fort Bragg, Jessica Morcell Hayes from the City Council in Fort Bragg was in communication with the Navy, trying to get them to come back. It was my understanding that they said they would, but then they wrote to her and said they will not. And so we were waiting on that, and it didn't happen. And then we were waiting to see if we could have some guest speaker scientists through the Noyo Center, and also it wasn't happen in time. Comments are due on this issue on June 12th. So we were like, okay, then we'll have a meeting on our own, right? And probably this is like the best it could be anyways, right? I don't know what they would do if they were here anyways, the Navy folks. As we all know, we went to the meeting in Fort Bragg. So in any case, it's a place for us to hear from each other. So I encourage, comments. Thais is going to speak more about what makes a substantive comment. Sometimes comments on an environmental impact statement like this, the Navy's proposing to do something, they have to tell us what they're proposing to do. It's a very long report. We get to make comments on it. Sometimes substantive comments require them to do further studies, slowing it down or changing the plan in some way. So that has happened in the past. I don't know how often or whatever, right? That's hard to say. Something like that. But I feel like the other point of tonight is to get to know each other and what each other is thinking about this. And in addition to writing better comments, what I was planning to do is to take notes up here while people are speaking to write down what other things do you think we should do about this situation. Because writing comments is one thing, and it can have an impact. But it's not the only thing we can do. And if we just write a comment and think that it's all good, we're probably wrong. Okay, so that was my intention. I encourage comments about that as well. If people have other ideas of what else we should do, please share that as part of your comment too. Even if you're like me, you're not a scientist, you don't know really what to say about these effects, there's other comments. We want to hear from each other in other ways too. Okay?
Excuse me, who are you?
Oh, my name is Andy Wellspring. Okay, so I think that is the introduction, right? To start us off then with the speak out, the public comments, I'd like to read the majority of the statement that was made by the 10 local tribes here, local to Mendocino County. Oh, last other thing about announcements. Keith Weiner here is recording the event, but we ask that if you don't want to be recorded for any reason, there's no judgment on that. And you would just, you'll notice the camera once you get here. Maybe you say when you're coming down. If you don't want to be recorded, that's okay. And Keith has agreed to turn it off for people who don't want to be recorded. So if other people, I notice you have a recording device as well.
This is for KGUA.
Great.
That's okay.
Great. Yeah, we were just taking it.
And I am taking notes for a possible article in the ICO, Independent Coast Observer, so if someone doesn't want their comment, just wait.
Great. Okay, so I think that we'll all, anyone who's recording will hear that someone doesn't want that, and please don't record when someone states that desire. All right? Okay, so again, this is a statement coming from the Caddo tribe, the Coyote Valley Band of Pomo Indians, the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians, the Little River Band of Pomo Indians, the Pinole Pomo Nation, Potter Valley Tribe, Robinson Rancheria of Pomo Indians, Round Valley Indian Tribes, Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Indians, and the Sherwood Valley Rancheria of Pomo Indians, all together in the Sinkyone Intertribal Council. And their comment reads as follows. To the Navy. Dear Project Manager, the above tribes submit the following comments on the draft supplemental EIS for the Navy's Northwest training and testing activities. Each is a federally recognized tribe that maintains government-to-government relations with the United States. The tribes have commented on earlier reviews of the impacts of training and testing, the adequacy of the assessment of cultural, spiritual, and environmental impacts from the Navy's training and testing activities is especially important to us because they will take place in the Pacific Ocean, which holds great cultural and spiritual significance to the tribes. The tribes maintain deeply significant cultural and spiritual ties to the coastline, marine environment, and ocean waters along and adjacent to Mendocino and Humboldt counties, California. The 10 tribes established the Intertribal Sinkyone Wilderness Council, which is charged with the responsibility to protect and preserve the cultural, spiritual, and ecological resources that constitute the marine and terrestrial landscape of the traditional Sinkyone and adjacent tribal territories. Per the Navy's commitment to the tribes, the NWTT study area, which is the Northwest Training and Testing study area, described in section 1.1 of the Environmental Impact Statement, notes the constraint of conducting activities within the 12-mile area of state and federal waters delineated in a certain map. The Navy has communicated to us that it has implemented new processes designed to ensure its units adhere to these limitations. The 12-mile exclusionary decision was based in part on discussions that had occurred during the Tribal Navy consultations. The tribes note a certain table about marine species mitigation areas. Within 50 nautical miles from the shore in the Marine Special Coastal Mitigation Area, the Navy will not conduct explosive training activities, explosive testing activities, with the exception of explosive mine countermeasure and neutralization testing activities, non-explosive missile training activities, and non-explosive torpedo training activities. Should national security present a requirement to conduct these activities in the mitigation area, naval units will obtain permission from the appropriate designated command authority prior to commencement of the activity. So then this goes back to their statement after that quote. While the Marine Species Coastal Mitigation Area provides a measure of protection against harm from Navy training and testing, the tribes urge the Navy to expand the prohibited activities to include the use of sonar, considering the impacts such devices have on the health and well-being of whales and other marine mammals. The Navy references in another section a lawsuit which was the Intertribal Sinkyone Wilderness Council versus the National Marine Fisheries Services from 2012. That is, this organization of tribes already had a lawsuit with the National Marine Fisheries Services in 2012 because that Marine Fisheries Services permitted certain Navy activities and the tribe sued accordingly. The case includes a standing declaration by a tribal member, referenced and discussed a statement from the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians. The tribe provide the following additional comments for the record with regard to the SEIS. Comments, okay, I'll skip that part because it just refers to sections of the report. Okay, one of the Navy's rationales for updating the 2015 environmental impact statement with this one in 2019 is the need to incorporate analyses based on the most current and best available science and analytical methods. The tribes disagree with this rationale because best available science is not defined in the draft environmental impact statement. The working definition should take into account the tribal traditional knowledge, sometimes referred to as traditional ecological knowledge of the tribes. Since time immemorial, tribes have used and managed their traditional marine environment, including the southern portion of the Navy's training range. The deep-seated understanding of this environment, acquired and passed down for generations, is an epistemology that informs sustainable management and ensures abundant, healthy, and biologically diverse ecosystems. It represents a vitally important complement to the Western science that the Navy is required to utilize when analyzing impacts to tribal culture, spiritual, and marine resources. Tribal traditional knowledge should be meaningfully taken into account for this purpose, while fully respecting the need for cultural sensitivity and confidentiality. In their comment about the Marine Species Monitoring Program, they state that the Navy's environmental impact statement has a baseline against which to assess potential impacts of the training and testing. They say that this is essential to a thorough environmental review. In the report it says, accuracy in the baseline in turn depends on a robust monitoring program that is designed to fully encompass the marine species populations in the study area. The Navy's shift in priorities towards assessing the potential response of individual species to training and testing directly results from the lawsuit in 2012. This tribe strongly urged the Navy to expand its application of this approach. The tribes require that the monitoring program be expanded to include effects of training and testing beyond potential harm to species population levels. Population level effects are insufficient to fully take into account the potential harm that Navy training and testing may cause, because this standard does not fully incorporate the concept that impacts to tribal culture may not be manifested in physical impacts on marine species. Moreover, the courts have clarified that a finding of negligible impact does not fully satisfy the Navy's obligation under Marine Mammal Protection Act, and the Navy is subject to an independent statutory requirement to ensure that mitigation measures are sufficient to achieve the least practically adverse impact. There's more, but I would like to open the floor to other speakers. Later in the evening, I will share some more from the document. If you'd like to read their whole statement, it is over here on the table. Anna Marie Stenberg also brought some additional copies. Yes?
I have a question. How far do we know whether the sonar travel 100 miles looking at
Oh, I was about to pass the mic to Thais Mazur, and she can answer your question much better than I. Yeah.
Hi, thanks, Sandy. Hi, I'm Thais Mazur. I've worked a lot with scientists around the world doing, helping them and supporting them and doing ocean research. Recently, was living in Kona, Hawaii. We fought really hard to keep naval weapons testing off the coast of the Big Island, the West Coast. We lost. And I've worked a lot with scientists who have sued the Navy as well, and have been speaking to all of them, getting updates recently. We also have two world-renowned historical figures with us. I forgot you guys lived here on the North Coast. I'm so happy. The Mercers, who started their research in 1974, right, Scott? And I'm going to invite them up actually after I talk to speak. They're phenomenal. They've done extraordinary research. But to answer that question, sonar, at least the sonar that we've known and we've been able to measure in the past, which has changed, by the way, quite significantly. It's a rolling sound, and it can be, it goes out 300 miles, but the important thing is the decibels and how the level that it goes out. But what I've been told by scientists, and if you look at decibels compared to a Saturn rocket at takeoff, imagine standing next to a Saturn rocket at takeoff. That's pretty much what it's like for the whale. And I have a whole decibel chart. I didn't bring that because I thought that might get too weird, but too much. TMI. But one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that Marcia Green, Dr. Marcia Green, you guys know her? Yeah, Ocean Mammal Institute. She has filed 4 lawsuits with the U.S. Navy. Marcia Green versus the U.S. Navy. And she won a lawsuit. It took 3 years of negotiation. She went through Earth Justice and NRDC with that lawsuit to not do testing of sonar and so on explosives in the birthing grounds of the humpback whales in Maui. It was a huge win, big, big win. And what she didn't know is that that agreement ended in 2018. And along with that agreement that ended, the federal government has also changed the rules and regulations around what's called incidental takes. And maybe Scott and Tree can talk to that more, but what that means is the Navy is allowed to take the life of so many marine mammals. And that number has changed drastically. I spoke with Justin Visvicki today. He's our West Coast stranding coordinator. Amazing guy, he's a colleague of mine. We've done a lot of work together and really respect him. And he pointed out that we have Scott and Tree Mercer here, but actually we don't have a really good baseline for what's going on off the Mendocino coast. Nobody's really studied that. And one of the things I've been talking about with scientists is we better get our ducks in a row and get scientists out here and get those studies underway now. Because otherwise, we can't really measure what's going on here. The other thing that's important to note is that it's not just sonar the Navy's talking about. It is underwater detonation of missiles, torpedoes, releasing thousands of drones underwater, sonar, airstrikes, and this is a permit, by the way, for 12 miles off our coast. I was living in Kona when the Navy began their testing and training off the coast, and I can tell you it was pretty shocking. And the humpbacks didn't come that year. Sorry. I have a lot of emotion about this. It's very, and I can't believe it's happening here again. They're back. We talked years ago when Deborah Scott was still around with us, one of our residents. There are a bunch of us that talk to the Navy, but the Navy has changed its tactics and federal laws are being changed. So I'm not sure what to do or what to say. I think we just need to write letters the best we can and try to be as scientific as possible. But I can also tell you this, and I've been told this by 5 scientists in the last couple of days. If you write how the marine life is going to be affected, national security, excuse me for this, trumps marine life. And if human life is affected, if we can show that off our coast it's going to affect our fishing industry because deep water fish are 12 miles out. If we can show that we're now relying on a tourist industry and having war planes or naval weapons jets flying over our Mendocino village, like they're doing right now in Washington, Olympic National Park, and also Puget Sound, of course. The testing's already started there. We can show it will affect that. Somehow our economy, they may listen. But the other thing that I feel we should point out, and Justin Visbicki from NOAA told me this, he's the one who coined the term in that May 31st article. 70 gray whales have washed ashore this season on the West Coast. And scientists times that by 10 because most gray whales do not get to the coast. So that's 700. Well, we have 27,000. It's amazing how the gray whales have come back. And again, the Mercers can speak more to that. There is emaciation, whales that are starving, but there are also ship strikes, a lot of ship strikes that have been seen. Doesn't mean it's the Navy. But what it means is our oceans are already stressed, and why would we introduce more stressors at this point, as in sonar, drones, torpedoes, explosives? I think that's a very important point that we can make, because that information is new, and that NOAA has coined this a wildlife emergency. If you're going to write a letter, you might want to put that in there, a wildlife emergency.
Is there any website or data that you can refer to?
Yeah, there is.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any website or data that you can refer
Because they
to?
want that.
You can go to the NOAA website, and Justin Visbicki, our West Coast and disentanglement guy, scientist, is the one who said it, and NOAA's backing him up.
Would you spell his name?
Oh, yes, I can. Viezbicke.
I never would have gotten it.
First name?
Justin,
Thank you.
yes.
Stacy, back to your original mention of the lawsuits that prevailed, but they're no longer in effect.
Uh-huh.
When did those settle? Or when did one settle?
2016.
Can you repeat
And
the
you can
question?
look up Dr. Marcia Green Ocean Mammal Institute.
For the recordings, can you repeat the question?
Oh, what is the lawsuits? Who filed those lawsuits 4 times against the United States Navy? Her name is Dr. Marcia Green, Ocean Mammal Institute, and she is a professor at Albright College in Pennsylvania. Brown.
Thanks. Is there any, way to bring this to a state level, or I mean, I know national sort of trumps state, I would assume the Navy's national, but is there any way to, pass policy or, do anything on a state level that, has any impact on this that you're aware of?
Why don't you see me after?
Okay.
I have some information about that. Yeah.
So maybe that's I'm just thinking some way that maybe we could.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I think the first step is for us to, write letters. Yeah. So without further ado, I think that we should invite the experts up. I'm so grateful that you live here part-time on the coast and the rest of the time in Juneau. Yay. Oh, Maine. Okay. And this is Tree and Scott Mercer. As I said, they are internationally renowned for their extraordinary work. Scott's been doing this since 1974, studying marine mammals, especially cataloging the tales of humpbacks. And he's the man of the hour. So I'm so glad you guys drove up all the way from Wallala. Thanks so much.
Well, it's good to see so many of you here. The town of Mendocino is well known for its activism. I'm aware of the Mendocino whale wars that took place in the 70s. If any of you are here now who are involved with that, well, God bless you. Went out and confronted the whalers off the coast here when they were trying to harpoon sperm whales. So that was very heroic at that time. I did start in 1974. I like to say I was only 3 years old then, but I wasn't. I was in Monterey. I was a student at College of Marin and also San Francisco State. And I was concentrating in invertebrate marine zoology. And I signed up at College of Marin, I signed up for an independent study class. And I didn't know what I was going to do, and I did see an article about sea otters, so I went down to Monterey and became involved in a very lengthy sea otter feeding ecology study. And I dropped marine invertebrates at that point. I became so fascinated with marine mammals. Then I went back to New England and started a whale watch company. Eventually moved it to Newburyport, Massachusetts. We do live in Maine right now, part of the time. And we're here about 9 or 10 months of the year now, and 2 to 3 months in Maine. And by starting a whale watch company, I knew I wouldn't have to write grants to try to get out on the water. And the whale watch company got me out on the water in the Gulf of Maine about 165 days a year. And then during the winter, I did some research work with the New England Aquarium and also right whale studies. So that's my background in a nutshell. When Tree here retired from teaching after 35 years, and she was still sane, we decided to come back out here and start up a gray whale project. And what I knew most about gray whales was I was teaching at the University of New Hampshire for a while, about 17 years, a marine mammal class there, and I would talk about gray whales, but I hadn't spent a lot of time around them. So we, in 2014, we began counting gray whales. We're all shore-based. We don't get out on the ocean on boats, and I don't think they'd be too productive here. It's so rough and windy. So we're shore-based, mostly from Point Arena, Lighthouse Peninsula, and we have counted so far 10 species of marine mammals from the peninsula, and those, of whales, and those include, for the baleen whales, it's humpbacks, finbacks, minke whales, blue whales, and of course gray whales. And for toothed whales, Tursiops, the bottlenose, harbor porpoise, common dolphins, right whale dolphins, and grampus whales, also known as rhesus dolphins, orcas, and we haven't seen them yet, but pelagic trips with highly qualified observers have seen Pacific white-sided dolphins out of Fort Bragg. So that's 11 species that we know of right in this area. And all of these, as all whales are and cetaceans are, they're acoustic animals. They spend their lives producing sound and living by sound. Water is murky and also very dense. So they rely entirely for finding each other and for mating, communicating, feeding strategies, whether it's group feeding strategy like toothed whales engage in, or solitary feeding, or opportunistic group feeding that baleen whales engage in. It's all by sound. I've spent thousands of hours up on the roofs of boats, various boats, in areas that are heavy feeding grounds for whales, like humpback whales at Snowwagon Bank in Massachusetts, and without a whale in sight. And then the currents will change, or the tide changes, and suddenly you might have 40 humpback whales feeding around you. And where did they come from? And they just suddenly come over the horizon. And these whales, I think, from watching them, hear the changes in tides, upwelling, and currents. They rely on that. And as some of them start feeding, then other whales hear that from miles away. They hear the feeding strategies of the other humpback whales, and they hear the sounds being made, and then they come in and begin to feed. So I have a little bit of information on the sonar. We were getting ready to fight the Trump administration on their continued drilling obsession out here. And then we recently heard from Richard Charter that the Department of Interior was going to drop the idea to drill for oil, and they were going to put up wind arrays out here, which I think they thought, well, the environmentalists like that, wind power, so let's try that one. But the seismic, the testing that they would do to find suitable substrate to put these large arrays in of foundations, I'm trying to say, for the windmills, requires a lot of sonic testing, and as you just heard, how loud that is. The jet engine 100 feet away at full blast on a runway, just before they start going down the runway, is about how loud the seismic blasting is. It goes off every 7 to 10 seconds, 24 hours a day, year after year. And the equivalent is you're in your house with your family, and hand grenades are going off outside your house every 7 to 10 seconds while you're in the house trying to eat and sleep, communicate with your family. And that's what this entails. Now, a lot of this work was done by Professor Robert Macaulay, MC and capital C, A-U-L-E-Y, of the University of Western Australia. And his work showed that the sonic blasts actually blow holes right through swarms of zooplankton, which is, and it got worse as they went further away from the blast. More and more destruction done to the zooplankton. So this is dangerous to the entire food web, starting with zooplankton, and then working your way up. Also, the fisheries have all been impacted by this. In Australia, haddock, various species of rockfish, codfish, and one kind of alarming statistic here was sonic testing off Australia killed $70 million worth of scallops, or 24,000 tons. So it's not just the fish, also animals living right on the bottom. And I looked up a little bit about what the Navy has been doing, and love these legal pads. And they found that work that's been done on whales that have come ashore after being subjected to sonic testing had nitrogen in their tissues, which is like getting the bends. And we always felt that whales went up and down on one breath, so they weren't going to get the bends like human divers. But they are finding that, so it appears that the sonic testing scares them, so they're actually being scared to death. And they go through a flight or fight response, and it changes their breathing pattern, their heart rate goes up, and the nitrogen ends up in their bloodstream. And this appears to be, it's killing some of them that come ashore. So they're swimming vigorously away from the sonar, changing their dive patterns and breathing pattern, well, the dive pattern, they're not breathing, but diving pattern. The stress response overrides the diving response. Whales accumulate nitrogen. It's similar to getting an adrenaline shot. And then I did bring, I'm not on the Wi-Fi here, but somehow this is working. This was a recording made by Ken Balcom, who Ken and his brother Howie Garrett are up in Puget Sound working with the southern resident orcas and one of the most endangered species. They're having a hard time finding food up there because of the dams, and the salmon population is down. So southern resident, this is a recording of the sonar that Ken made from the beach.
The naval sonar or the animals?
Naval sonar.
And where is this Puget Sound?
Puget Sound, yeah. This is the naval sonar. On the video, you can also see orcas getting out of the area as fast as they can go.
Is there a web link to this?
Yeah, we're on Earth Justice.
You can also go on to Michael Stalker's website. He is an ocean noise specialist living in Marin. Michael Stalker. And he's very interested in coming here and speaking to our community. But you can get on there and listen to all kinds of sounds that the Navy is creating underneath the ocean, and read more about that to understand.
Is that Michael Stalker, S-T-A-L-K-E-R?
S-T-O-C-K-E-R.
Who is that?
Michael Stalker, S-T-O-C-K-E-R. He has a research institute that looks at ocean noise and its effect on marine mammals. As they're getting this going, I just wanted to say something, that a lot of scientists do work for the Navy, and the Navy will tell you that. And just as the scientists are getting all that material together and sort of finalizing their findings, they are moved somewhere else to start studies again. And I've been told that by scientists who have worked for the Navy, who are doing the best they can, that it kind of wrecks that data and it isn't able to be used. So I wanted to let you guys know that that's happening. Because the Navy has to show that they are in fact having scientific research done. That's really important. They have to be able to show that, just like they had to have a town hall meeting, public meeting for us. But their latest thing is they have stations around a room with no mics, so no one can hear each other. You know?
Left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
The other thing, I went over the draft EIS, especially concerning the gray whales, and the reference. I copied all the reference material, who they're referencing, the studies and stuff, and the study on population goes back to 1984, and the references. I made a copy of it. I'll put it on the desk. The references are from 1984 through 2014. Those are their articles that they're quoting. Most of them are in the early 2000s. So, and we all know how much everything has changed since then. So I'm going to put the reference. It's 2 pages on just the gray whales, and I'll put it up there for anybody. And if anybody wants it, they can email me, and I can email it to them. Okay?
And your email?
AMS, my initials, Anna Marie Stenberg at mcn.org. What? I only have 1 copy, so I'll put it up at the desk. You can email me and I'll send it to you. What?
This is Ken Balcom's recording, and fortunately, you can actually see everything now. That's the naval vessel that was offshore in Puget Sound, and you'll see J-Pod, one of the southern resident pods of orcas that's so badly endangered, leaving the area when this started. You also hear Ken's voice. I believe this is the time that he got in touch with the ship and asked them to stop and go away, and they did stop. You hear just how annoying this sound is.
Probably the source of these sounds. Bush or somebody, and then, it goes up and then goes down. Well, that's what they were telling me in here, but we see him broadside now. I couldn't tell you the color he's backlit, but
Kind of like gray.
yeah. But this is nuts, man. This is nuts. Yeah. Well, now Jay's have turned around.
You can imagine how loud it is for them to know where to go. You see them going in circles trying to get away from the sound. One of the problems too with this type of racket in the ocean is that mothers and calves can get separated and not find each other again because they can't communicate. Mother can't let out her calls and have the calf respond and find each other. As I was mentioning already, feeding and also for mating. And we do know that blue whales can make sounds that travel 1,000 miles underwater. And the sound that's being made by ships is bad enough. But this sound here overlaps what they're trying to do now, is, what the whales are trying to do just to live each day. Dr. Chris Clark from Cornell, when the Cold War ended, a lot of data was given up by the Navy from the submarine arrays, and which they kept secret. But they had a lot of recordings of whales. At first, they didn't know what the animals were, what the noises were. And finally, they figured out it was whales. But he has decided that a blue whale, for example, sitting off the coast of Bermuda, could let out some long, low blasts and get a mental image of the coast of the East Coast, what it looks like. Same as we would do with eyes if they're up on top of a mountain and we're looking around at the terrain. They're doing with their hearing. So when the echo comes back to them, they get a visual picture of what the East Coast of the United States looks like just with their brain. So all of that can be obliterated by so much sound in the ocean. Dr. Rosalind Rolland at the New England Aquarium did a study with right whales from the Bay of Fundy, showing that just stress from ships causes a great jump in their stress hormones. And she did this by, they followed the gray whales around the Bay of Fundy, photographing them, and through an unfortunate event on September 11th in 2001, the attack at the World Trade Center, President George Bush ordered all planes and all shipping to stop for a few days. And it gave them the unique opportunity they already had a big database of the right whales living in the Bay of Fundy and all the background noise from ships. And when he ordered everything to stop, they had quiet. And so when it started again a few days later, they could compare before, during, and after the silence. And she found that stress levels immediately came back more than normal during those 3 days. And then stress levels went high again when shipping and the airplanes started up again. So we do know there's evidence there. That's Rosalind Rolland, R-O-L-L-A-N-D, from the New England Aquarium. And other stresses in the ocean, you heard about the entanglements and ship strikes. Dr. Michael Moore at Woods Hole did a study a few years ago and showed that if the United States was involved in whaling, the number of whales we would be allowed to take is less than what's being killed each year right now in nets and ship strikes. That's available online too. And it's Michael Moore, Dr. Michael Moore. Did you want to add in? Okay. So our big concern is each day is how the whales are navigating and moving around and able to hear each other and also get a visual picture of the ocean in front of them. You want to know where a seamount is if you're moving along. Give me water.
Is there some water?
Oh, thanks. Got a little frazzled driving here. We got stopped in traffic. And we're going to be really late. Some obscure part of the highway between Elk and here, and they were doing road construction at this hour. So we came to a complete stop.
While they're getting water for you, I'm thinking that might be important to mention is that 200,000 tons of toxins that will be released in the ocean during the naval testing and training on the West Coast. And there is no way to clean that up. This includes heavy metals, DU, depleted uranium, many other things. The Navy has written back to me and said that all of that will just mix with the water and go away and sink to the bottom. And one of the things we need to remember is we have one of the biggest upwellings of nutrients here off this coast. So that's not going to happen. And that's one reason, as Scott was saying, we have so many different species of whale. It's huge. Big, big number. Because there is so much food here and so much of a big upwelling, churning of the ocean to bring those nutrients up.
And the gray whales and a number of whales are bottom feeders. So when they're talking about munitions and explosives and everything dropping to the bottom and dissipating down there, you have to take into consideration that a number of our whales are bottom feeders. And how many whales have we seen that have die with plastics and car parts and everything else in their stomachs? And also the increased acidification of the ocean will break down those, and the ocean is already in dire straits. So adding more to it is unconscionable.
Thank you. I can talk again. raising a little water will do. I read a paper the other day, was speaking about toxins and plastics. The question was how much plastic is getting into the whales through their feeding. And the way that study was done, which isn't easy to do, but the study was done was by collecting a large amount of their forage fish that, for example, humpbacks, finbacks, minke whales, and many of the other baleen whales and the toothed whales feed on mackerel and so forth, and seeing how much plastic was in them that they're getting through their feeding. So it's going up through the food chain that way. The whales are eating fish that have plastics in them from feeding on smaller organisms. And I mentioned about Michael Moore's study there about how many whales are being killed in ship strikes and entanglements, which is more than would happen if we had a whaling industry here. And there was something else to mention. Also, not just the calls that they make to navigate around, but there's evidence too that the sonic testing you were mentioning in Hawaii is interrupting the humpback whale singing. And it's still out of question. The jury's still out on exactly why they sing, but it appears that logically, since the males are doing the singing and they're on breeding grounds, maybe to attract females. Although every now and then they throw us a curve, and it might not be the case, but the sonic testing in that area is causing the humpback whales to cut short their songs or stop singing altogether because the songs aren't being heard by other whales to attract them. And I got some things written down here. Well, a couple of things I was going to tell you. I'm escaping here for a moment, but do you have any questions that might remind me of? Yeah.
I have a question. I've been wondering how wide a corridor is needed along the coast for migrating whales to have a safe space in terms of sound.
No, thank you. When we're watching gray whales in the winter, we're seeing them up to about 5 miles offshore, and they're traveling along from the Arctic down. So you just reminded me what I was going to say. And so I don't know how far out you have to go. The Marine Mammal Observer Program puts people on boats that are doing seismic surveys or something else, blasting or something underwater, one insult after another. And when they see a marine mammal, they're supposed to stop the operation. They have the authority to stop the ship. I think it's within 800 yards. But that's a laugher. If you're a whale, they think in terms of ocean basins, with blue whales able to make sounds over 1,000 miles. There's a book called The 1,000-Mile Song that may be in your bookstore here in Mendocino. It is? Yeah, it's a great book. And it documents one event after another of very long-distance sounds made by the whales and received by hydrophones in various locations. What I was going to say, we were talking about the deaths of the gray whales and how stressed the environment's getting. The climate change up in the Arctic is changing that ecosystem very quickly. The ice in the Arctic has been there almost 3 million years. So that is the ecosystem. And it's melting quickly. And there's an algae that grows on the bottom of the ice, also in the Antarctic. And when that ice, in a healthy environment, provides food for animals coming up and nibbling off the top of it. As it dies, it drops down, and mid-level feeders grab it and eat it. When it goes to the bottom, it nourishes the invertebrates the gray whales feed on. And the deaths that are happening here, I think, is the whales are leaving the area malnourished, and they go 5,000 miles down to Mexico, 5,000 miles back, and some of them are running out of gas on the way. I haven't heard of, well, as you heard, for every whale that dies, there's at least 9 that sink to the bottom. So we don't know how many females that had a calf may have died on the way, leaving the calf orphaned. But we do know that gray whale females, if they don't get enough nourishment, will abort a calf if they get pregnant in Mexico in the winter, and then they come back up to feed during the summer and fall up in the Arctic. And if they did get pregnant in Mexico, if they don't get enough food to eat, they'll abort the calf, which saves her life. If they kept the calf, it would probably kill both of them. If the mother was malnourished and couldn't afford to develop the calf. So we did have less calves this year. I'm wondering if a lot of them just didn't either abort it or weren't nourished enough to get pregnant. That's another thing. If a female is not nourished enough or fit, then they can't get pregnant, even if they mate with a male down there. So we're really watching the destruction of the Arctic ecosystem, before our eyes here. And what I heard from the Trump administration was, oh good, we can get more ships in there if the ice is gone. And which also makes more noise and also more ship strikes, let alone the fact that the ecosystem is unraveling there. So, any more questions there?
Scott, so the gray whale is kind of what's up because we know a lot of death. There have been a lot that have washed ashore that are dead. Can you talk a little bit about the endangered species off our coast, and also how the blues and those are further out, but also depend on that further out from the coast environment?
Right. Another one of the large species we're seeing here are finbacks and blue whales. They're traveling along at. Finbacks don't seem to have a specific mating or calving ground. They just seem to disperse through whatever ocean they're in. We noticed that in the North Atlantic, and I think it's the same deal here. Blue whales do migrate more down to the south, down off of Mexico. Work has been done down there by John Calabakidis and our friend on the East Coast, Richard Sears, and their compatriots down there in the winter. So these whales are migrating back up, and some of them come close enough so the tree and I have seen them off the peninsula. They've been seen off of Sea Ranch. When I say peninsula, I mean the Point Arena Lighthouse Peninsula. And we've seen blue whales going by there several times, and also finback whales. We had a finback go by on Sunday. And these whales are relying on they're sending out these low frequency sounds to give them that mental picture back of what the ocean bottom looks like in front of them, so they can avoid seamounts and land features out in front of them. So not only ship noise is obstructing that, now we're adding this latest thing to it. And what I was talking about before was the Department of Interior has been talking about dropping the oil drilling because it's so unpopular, and is now talking about putting in these windmill arrays. What they're going to have to do is sonar testing to find good substrate for putting in the foundations for these. And there's also, what's that chain link? Oh, it's these, it's a chain link, yeah. The chains going across these different cables going across are going to set up like a fence that whales could get entangled into. Between the different foundations of these windmill setups, they're going to be chained together. A network of chains, which is also another obstruction. So we first heard about wind power, we thought, oh great, and then when along came the details. I began doing some research on the sonic testing, and when they were talking about drilling out here, and what a nightmare that is. And then they talked about dropping it. And on the East Coast, all the governors from Maine to Florida have come out in opposition to drilling and to the sonic testing because of the danger to the North Atlantic right whale, which is down to about 400 now. And this will be right in their calving grounds. Unfortunately, the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has signed off on that. It's going to allow it the way it's going. It was interesting, though, because the former governor of Florida, a very staunch Republican who's now their senator, came out against this drilling because he thought he wouldn't get elected. And that's the big reason that he's opposed to drilling off of Florida. He is now a senator, but the current governor also afraid of becoming unpopular if he advocates drilling off the Florida coast, is now suddenly opposed to Florida drilling. So it may become a political football here for some of the political liability for some of the politicians who are advocating drilling off both coasts.
Scott, what should we do? What do we need to do as a community? Can we have any effect? What do you think?
Well, since we've seen a couple of politicians down south here in Florida running scared from this topic, you really need to do what you're doing here now, which is just flood them with letters and put political pressure on them. I'm trying to think of other things we've been involved in that may or may not have worked, but at least they get the word. If they get just flooded with a lot of opposition. You know, this sort of thing going on here tonight, they don't like. It scares them.
Can you explain what the national security value of all this is supposed to be that the Navy's putting out there?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because you've noticed before over the years, as soon as they attach national security to it, it usually just gets whitewashed right through. I think they come up with different technology, and so we heard it on Saturday, the Navy often says that they've worked on this and they've refined their operations and it's not as dangerous as it used to be, but it's still a lot of noise, and the animals have not evolved beyond a point where they're not going to be harmed by it. So,
Is this to detect submarines or something? Is that
well, I think that, yeah, it's claiming that they want to test any new equipment that they have. But what they do is, I was reading a little bit about how they do this. Now, when the oil and gas companies doing this, they tow arrays behind their ships, which every 7 to 10 seconds let off these loud blasts, 24 hours a day. And on the East Coast, they've contracted with 5 different companies, so they're going to line these ships up 5 across with these arrays behind there every 7 to 10 seconds, each one of them letting out a blast. With the Navy, they have their own ships, and they also are towing arrays behind them, which probably are also side-scanning sonar, and it's also to, I'm sure, have to bring their own submarines in to see how well they can find them. But I think that's the reason why.
Why do we need defending? We are attacking.
One at a time, one at a time.
But that's why they do it.
Folks, I know we all have a lot of questions. I know there's more people who do want to speak. So we have someone here who'd like to speak, and then Davina, maybe you'd like to speak when he's finished. Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. And I would encourage you to speak again later as well if you'd like to.
My name is David Gurney, and first off, with great respect, I do need to make a correction of what he was saying about the sonic and sonar testing. The actual term is seismic testing. What he's referring to get the substrate for either wind generator or oil drilling. What seismic testing does, as he mentioned, they tow arrays behind a boat and set off explosions, which is actually 192 decibels, and it's instant deafness if a whale or any sea mammal is within range of that, anywhere within a mile or 2 or 3 or 5. We were successful in stopping PG&E from doing seismic testing off Diablo Canyon a few years ago. Yes. We went to Sacramento. We actually stopped them from doing that. So that was one victory. We connected, well, it's a funny story, but we were trying to hold the MLPA corruption in check in Eureka, and they mentioned at their last meeting in Eureka that they were going to be doing the seismic testing in Morro Bay off Diablo Canyon. I wrote about it in my blog, and a cat named Joey Ricano down there, who's an incredible activist, organized everybody, and we went to Sacramento, and one thing led to even the whales took part in that one. The whales showed up in droves in Morro Bay by the thousands that year. Anyway, we stopped them. But it's important to keep that distinction between sonar and sonic testing, whatever that is, and seismic testing. I'm sure he knows, but it's important to get the terms straight or they won't respect what you're saying. But really the reason, and it does connect with the Diablo Canyon, in that what I've seen in this, the problem with the Navy is that the reason they're out there is to protect us. And what they're protecting us from is submarines and nuclear weapons. And right now, 9 countries, I won't be too long, so I'll try to keep this within 5 minutes. Right now, 9 countries have nuclear weapons. Of course, we're one of them. And I want to bring people's attention to the International Treaty for Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which was created 2 years ago. It's been signed by 120 nations. It's been ratified by around 50. It's to stop, I'm kind of nervous, my mask going dry too. It's to stop nuclear weapons. We're not going to stop the Navy from doing what they're doing until we get rid of the nuclear weapons. It's as simple as that. And I'm not trying to divert people. You still need to write letters to the Navy about this issue and get those in by the 12th. But it's also important to see the bigger picture, which is we have to stop the spread of nuclear weapons, period. I want to refer everybody to hashtag nuclear ban, just like it sounds, one word, hashtag nuclear ban. It's by the International Committee of the Red Cross, who's starting a huge effort right now in just exactly what I'm talking about, to stop nuclear war, nuclear weapons. Their motto is, let's decide the future of nuclear weapons before they decide ours. And the whales, and you know, it's, anyway, they have a new video out called What Would You Choose, Live or Die? And it's a very powerful video, and I encourage everybody to watch that and try to, if anybody wants to talk to me after this about trying to organize some local group in trying to get our nation in line with the rest of the world as more and more countries sign on to this international treaty against nuclear weapons, I'd be happy to try to facilitate that. But that's really all I have to say. Also, I wanted to ask, I was curious how many people in the audience are familiar with the term hibakusha? Does anybody know what the word hibakusha means? Hibakusha? That's the word that the Japanese coined for a person affected by the bomb. It refers to people who were injured by the Hiroshima or Nagasaki blasts by the United States. 150,000 people were instantly killed in Hiroshima, 75,000 in Nagasaki. Untold people died soon afterwards, but the people who survived, that's the hibakusha. Those are the survivors who managed to live on. There were 650,000 of those. There are 155,000 still alive today, and a lot of those people are behind this movement now, international movement to stop nuclear weapons. So we need to make it a stigma, so that countries that are holding this above the rest of the world are stigmatized. It's no longer tolerable to even use nuclear weapons as a threat. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is because that is why the submarines and the sonar is out there. We have around 1,600 nuclear warheads. Russia has almost an equal number, a few more. France has 300. England has about 220. But the thing is, France and England, they don't keep those nuclear missiles on their countries, they're all on submarines. All those missiles are in submarines. So we're not the only country that has submarines. China is unfortunately, they're really charging up their Navy right now, and we're in the middle of a huge, and Russia, as you might know, is really flashing their nuclear swords lately. So, you know, I mean, we have climate change, and this is what we need to deal with. And this is, a lot of people think, is more crucial right now than even climate change. So, anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I just had a question about, and forgive me for not understanding this, but I thought that the tribe of California, led by one of my allies, Juan Rosales,
Can you repeat the question?
was able, with Earth Justice, to sue the Navy. So was that just to keep them 12 miles off? Why did that get over the
I couldn't hear a question.
The lawsuit that Earth Justice filed and ran for the tribes. Can you speak to that?
No, I can't.
Okay.
No, I can't.
I can a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you use the
That's around.
Hi, my name's Nicole Martinson. I'm with Surfrider Foundation, the Mendocino County chapter. So the lawsuit that you're referring to, our chapter also signed on to that. That was the last go-round that we had with the Navy. So that was their last supplemental, that was their last draft of the EIS. And I don't know if people are aware, but the Navy re-ups the draft every 5 years. So that was in 2015, 5 years later, this is for the testing that will continue in 2020. So what Intertribal Sinkyone Wilderness, Earth Justice, there were several other partners involved in this. We sought out NRDC, and we looked for holes in the draft, and we found that a division of NOAA had signed off really too quickly without being substantiated that there was going to be less take of marine mammals than was actually going to happen. So that was how that came about. Yeah.
And everybody understands that a take is a death, right? When you hear the term take. Okay. Questions?
When I talked to staff at the Navy personnel, actually they defined their definition of take as being any change in behavior,
yes,
which can be anything from a nod to death, and that spectrum.
Yeah.
So take may have a different meaning for different people, but that's how they define
sometimes
it.
I think it's behavioral impact or, okay.
Yes.
Okay. There's some dispute over that. Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, as far as what I wanted to say in terms of Surfrider and what we would like to encourage is to really prepare substantive comments. And I think it's a place where we're all very emotional about this. We're all very passionate and we can be very angry. But I can't stress enough how important it is to focus on something factual when commenting on the draft. And whether that means reading, I think it's 83 pages, which I've done, but if you don't have time to do that, focus on one small piece of it. Latch onto something that matters to you or an individual species. Maybe it's minke whales, maybe it's right whales. Look at other studies that have happened before with sonar and seismic testing, like what Scott Mercer was saying about scallops in Australia. If we can compare other instances of damage and of harm I think it will be that much more powerful at this point. So
if we're not marine biologists or experts, how do we come up with anything?
I'm not a marine biologist either, but there are. Oh, so the question was, when we're not marine biologists or experts, how do we come up with a focus? There are some really great resources out there for us. Anna Maria,
Yeah.
you contacted me, I think, about today's meeting, and you provided some really excellent links.
That was Maria Teresa.
Is she here?
Just right there.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you for coming. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So is there a way that you can share those links that you provided with everyone here? Are they?
Actually, there's a copy of that letter,
Okay.
Andy's letter, and at the bottom it has the links to a whole series of articles about earth justice.
Yes.
For people on the radio. Are there any more left there?
Yes.
Yeah.
So did you hear that
There's some links on a flyer over here. There's also articles on the table.
there are also we have an article on our Surfrider website. It's mendocino.surfrider.org. You'll find a blog post that has a lot of points that we're making in our comment letter. I held off on submitting it because really in our chapter letter we're focusing on the gray whale die-off. And unfortunately, when I wrote it a couple weeks ago, we were looking specifically at gray whale die-off in the San Francisco Bay Area. And at that time it was 9, now it's 13, at least 70 whales on the whole West Coast that are recorded. Right, maybe times 10, which is what Scott Mercer was saying. So if I think if you look in the next few days before the comment period is due, there are resources out there for us to really focus on. Yeah.
I could kind of, I would just say a blast and then put here. Look through science magazines and being here on the coast temporarily. I'm actually in a vehicle with this, but they're doing a lot of neuroscience and marine biology testing, as you say, in aging. They're bringing this into our nuclear medicine. Of course, now the powers that be that are willing brought this to us in neural nets.
I don't know about those.
Yeah, most people don't. Okay. That's usually the question that was during the 40s and 50s, but those are coming out more so because of changes. Today we just lost the 2003 iTunes, which there was a lot of sound.
Can we pass the mic?
Yeah, we do.
And those frequencies interfered with a lot of things in our hospitals, our cities.
That's the mic up here so we can hear it.
I think it's connected.
If you want to speak, you gotta come down.
Yeah, folks, the cord is very short. I'd like to, let's keep our comments focused towards this environmental impact statement that is happening. Yeah, that's great. Did you have any, I just want to ask if you had one other thing you wanted to say, and then let's pass the mic.
I'm good.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, great. Davina, I wanted to invite you down. I don't know if anyone who was at the official Navy meeting in Fort Bragg a couple weeks ago, a lot of us were very impressed with Davina's knowledge, so thank you for coming again tonight to share with everyone.
Who's Davina?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Davina Liberty, and I actually grew up here. And then when I got to high school age, I had the benefit of moving up to the San Juan Islands in the Salish Sea. So I'm actually an Anna Cordes High School graduate from Hidalgo Island. So I had the benefit of going out on the ocean, the sound there, and following the JK and L resident pods on a regular basis, which is just truly fascinating and amazing. And then I moved back down here. Right now I am a marine naturalist student out of Western Washington University. I will be returning up there in July to finish my program in the field. I'm very excited about it. I'm also the president and founder of the Mendocino Mermaids. I'm not sure if you've heard of us. We've removed 547 pounds of garbage off our local beaches of the Mendocino coast in the past year. So I wanted to point out a few wonderful things about that horrible video that this gentleman showed. It's fascinating but horrible. So when it was on the screen, you saw all the whales there, and the noises are going off, and you have to remember, like he was saying, that they're completely an auditory species, and they are purely about auditory communication. So when they blast for each other, that's how they talk to each other. So if you noticed in the film there, they were really hunkering close to each other, almost like making contact as they were moving. Super important that in that moment they were completely deaf. Long-term effects for whales subjected to that kind of torture. A deaf whale is a dead whale. You never want to forget that. They cannot communicate, they cannot hunt, they cannot work together as a cohesive group. Deaf whale, dead whale. With baleen species, and he spoke a little bit about that, the baleen whales will descend extremely rapidly to try to escape. And when they cannot escape with the sound, they will ascend extremely rapidly to attempt to escape. And they will get the bends and decompression sickness, which leads to disorientation, nitrogen bubbles in the bloodstream, which leads to death. It's important to remember that this is the only instance that you will ever observe this in whales. It's not something that happens to them in their day-to-day lives. It's only ever been observed because of Navy testing. Currently in the UK, in the last several months, there have been dozens of deaths, humpback whales, sperm whales, beaked whales, washing up on the shores of Ireland, Scotland, and England from the English military sonar testing. My point with this is that this is a contemporary issue, and when we were at the Navy meeting before, I tried to bring that to the attention, and of course they knew nothing about it. They were like, "Oh, just back in the day, it was different." And it's like, well, no, this is still something that's happening today, this day and age. Just 3 weeks ago, humpback whales washing up dead. They did necropsies on them from the Ocean Institute over there in Ireland. It is from military testing. If this comes here, this is going to happen here. And my question to them is, how are they going to take responsibility for that? And of course, they have no answer. Did we have anyone here from City Council tonight? Do we have any representatives from City Council? That's negative. My recommendation as far as approaching this is, yes, write your letters, submit your letters by the date. They have the forms right over there on the corner of the table. My recommendation is to approach your councilman. We need to push legislation. That is the only way that we are going to make a connection from here to the top. This is how our country is set up. This is how it's supposed to work. It's probably futile, but we have to try. Like, we have to try. Pushing legislation is the only way we can move this forward. Write your letters, push legislation, and never stop protesting. We already know they're going to do it anyway. Don't stop protesting. We can find someone with a boat. Let's go out there in the middle of their testing with our signs and wave at them. It might not do anything. We might get arrested, military prison. But, whatever. It'll be on the news. It'll bring attention to the issue. And, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If we can make it a national, thing, Mendocino, come on, because there's a history here of people stepping up and being awesome and extreme. Yes?
Involved in this whale research, are you actually familiar with the devices that they're using in the whales? But have you moved them or not?
When I was there, it was 2003. They've completely updated their entire systems in the Salish Sea for the whale spotting stations. So I assume that anything that I currently know, I'm about to get a whole new brush up in July when I go back.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm not current on their equipment. Yes.
You know, is Greenpeace doing,
Repeat the question.
Greenpeace, are they involved? I have not heard anything about Greenpeace being involved. Maybe we can send them some letters too. Yes.
So when you refer to legislation, are you thinking of state, county?
Yeah, city, talk to our city councilman, tell them they want to push it to county, talk to our county councilman, push it to state and just supervise, yes, keep climbing the political ladder.
I totally agree with you. I do want to bring to people's attention that the considered area for this increase of testing and training that the Navy wants to do, for one, it's already happening, and it's been happening since the last 30 years. So when they say expansion, it's not expanding the territory, it's an increase in the amount of testing that they're doing and the type of testing that they're doing. It also ends right at the Humboldt-Mendocino County border. So we can go and talk to city council members, and I firmly encourage us that we do that, but it's not, it's not directly off of our coast. We are, in a sense, representing all of the coastline north of us.
The entire west coast, basically, of our country. Yes.
The city of Fort Bragg did write a letter opposing the Navy testing in Sonoma.
So we need to take that and we need to build off that.
And Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, they did.
You want to read theirs?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I propose to the individuals that are exhibits that they do a 100-mile wide test-free zone corridor along the Pacific coast. Because not only the Greenway is going up down, but then the Humpback and Blue are going farther north to feet. And, you get to use a brush off. However, not this time, but the previous time when we were making public comment on mine, they actually had a drop-down box, a 100-mile corridor. And that's not true this time, that's wrong. And I'm not sure whether the distances that Sunlight goes, whether it really make any difference to them. So my question would be, that I want to know, is there any value in pushing that idea?
I think
Test-free zone along the coast.
I think it's a great idea. I don't think it's 100% effective, but it's better than 12 miles. Like a lot better.
What would be effective?
Yeah,
What would be effective?
Yeah, diffusion and distortion is extremely.
Sonar is rolling waves and it travels 300 miles. I said that at the beginning of the evening. And the decibel level is still extremely high. So that's important to remember. So it goes out and it rolls, and it is not linear. It is multi-dimensional, so it goes in all directions. That's the thing about sonar. It's not just, oh, there it goes. It's all-encompassing.
Yes?
To get the ball rolling, we might want to think about just writing a basic.
We can't hear you, so please use the mic because the whole side of the room can't hear you. Thank you.
I'm laughing.
Come on down.
We might want to consider CCing our carefully thought out letters to get a little more bang for the buck and CC them to every level of government going clear up to Washington.
Yep, sending all of our letters to
That
higher
way we
levels.
started, and we're all going to probably pick out different things we're going to write, so it could be just people here. We could make a difference.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Attack it from all sides. Go as far as you can. Push it. Take it as high as you can.
And also, if anybody knows anybody at Greenpeace, let's find out what's going
Yeah,
on.
let's send them some emails and letters. Absolutely. Yes?
June 12th is the last day to comment. That's a week from from now.
Yes.
I can't emphasize enough that everything you're speaking of are greater issues. But if you don't put in the comment by the 12th, that's it. And you put in a specific comment, and then in the EIS, they don't answer it, well, that's grounds for appeal in the legal system. If you all say nothing and just bring up about World War III, it's not going to make any difference. So if you please focus on specific comments that would require them to respond. A question, an issue.
That's really sly and I like it.
That should be emphasized.
That should be emphasized, but I also do not want people to be discouraged if they do not have any scientific background or if they have another opinion, not to write. It's important to write regardless of what your opinion, whatever your knowledge is, and express yourself as a citizen of this country and of this world, and that we're against this annihilation of all aquatic species.
Absolutely, we have to be extremely loud.
And being an old timer in this whole thing, from the early 90s when they first started having these hearings, they respond to any letter, and I finally stopped getting the EIS reports because I didn't want to have that much paper anymore, but they will respond to it regardless if you are a scientist or a marine person. I came from my fishing experience, and I got responses from it. So please, everybody, regardless of your background, right.
Yes.
By the way, I wanted to say they have a copy of the EIS at the library in Fort Bragg. They also have it on a disc. You can download it from their website. And if you want to look at the science, and it's fun. It is important. The comments need to be not only focused on this issue, but also what they call substantive.
Yeah.
You've been waiting for a long time.
I talked to my brother who's actually Navy down in San Diego, and he said that San Diego had been protesting something, similar activity. Does anyone know anyone in San Diego at UCSD or how successful they were or what they were protesting down there?
I do. I just talked to Justin Bisbicki and several other colleagues down there today. San Diego is under siege. They didn't win. That testing is going on down there. And the same thing is true with Olympia, Washington. There was a fourfold strategy with the community and all kinds of scientists in that area, including Cascadia Research. They lost their request to not have naval weapons testing there, and it is happening as we speak in Puget Sound, as I said earlier, and planes are flying over Olympia National Park. Because there are both big naval bases. That's true in both of those places. That's right.
I think what's really critical, following up on this gentleman's comments up here, focusing it within the 7 days and how you approached it, the actual impact and dollar speak, asking them how is it going to offset, find the numbers of how our fishing is going to be impacted, how is it going to offset that fishing amount that's going to be impacted with our, our revenues and how it's going to destroy our economies. That right there, I think, is critical within the next 7 days. Whether you're a research scientist or not, I think there's, resources to figure out where we, these numbers and get them down in your comments and asking them, okay, we're going to lose what, 20 million fishing during this time. How is our economy to absorb that, and what are they going to do about it?
We don't know what the economic. That's right. Guess what? We need to know because our economy is based on fishing and we don't have that information. So that research needs to be done. Remember, and this is what Scott was saying, that all the way to zooplankton, teeny weeny, all the way up is affected, including the fish, including the deep water fish.
Now, the fish as an industry, though, is documented somewhere in our city hall. There are stats. I'm a business major. Under an NAIC industry, which is a denominator around the world, as to how much the revenues we do derive in this city, county, state, etc. Those numbers are there. And we just need to dig them up and go to the right resources to put them in our paper and say, look, how are we gonna offset this? What's the Navy gonna do to compensate us for our losses? Just put them on the defensive already.
I like it.
Not only that.
Just a quick recap, make sure, just a quick recap to make sure that everybody got it. That's basically write your letters, send them in by the 12th, and also CC them to every single representative of Congress from here all the way up as high as you can. Their email addresses are available on Google. You can send it to them, and like that gentleman was saying, make sure you phrase it with a question, so that if they do not answer your question, we can get a little bit of blowback going. So we can all work together as a community and really, just take a stand.
There was a gentleman, Adam, one that we learned from it's really more even better if you write a hard copy of mail.
Yeah, absolutely, hard copy. Yeah, their mailing addresses are available online too. It's just, 20 minutes on Google, and don't feel like you have to be an expert. Anyone can write a blurb. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna Marie Stenberg. I'm not a scientist, but I have a lot of common sense. And for some people that haven't commented on the EIS or don't know how to tackle these thousands of pages, when you pull it up on your computer, put in find. There's a find place, search. I put in gray whales because that's one of the things that I wanted to comment on. And I can't read it very well online, so I made copies of the pages that they referred to gray whales on. And these are the copies. I'm going to leave it here. It says gray whales. And I've already pretty much finished my comment. And here's a chart. And it lists I decided, like I said, to focus on gray whales because NOAA has said it's a wildlife emergency. So I'm going to bounce off that. And here's a chart that shows, and they keep saying everything may affect, not likely to adversely affect. That's what the response is to all the different things that they're doing for the gray whales response. So there's a chart here, and it's in the EIS, and it lists all the things. And another place to go if you haven't commented before on an EIS is look at the public comment section of the EIS, and it gives you an idea of how the questions can be phrased and how the Navy responds to those questions. And I made copies of that, of the comments on the gray whales specifically. So I'll leave that here too, but if you can look online and see how to make a substantive comment or to make a comment that gets a response. So those are some of the things. As I said earlier, that I made a copy of the references they used in the EIS, and they go back. The population study was done in 1984 on the gray whales. The references all are from 1984 to 2014, referencing the gray whales, and I've asked them to update their information because the climate change is changing everything. There's a section in there, if you're talking about cumulative impact, there's a section in the EIS that talks about cumulative impacts. It's a bunch of bullshit, but it's there. So you can reference that. And the studies that they use for cumulative impact, again, are older studies. We know it's accelerating. So there's that. And then I spent about 5 days on it so far. The common murres, we just had a major die-off of the common murres here in Mendocino County. Put that in, common murres or murres, because there's only about 4 pages, and they don't show any effect of the common murres, even though one part they don't chart it, the common mirrors. And that's important because we've just seen a major die-off. And what they do say is common mirrors have been, they cite a study that shows that they're affected by the sound. So that's in the EIS, but they don't say what their sounds, their seismic test, their sonar, their munitions, they don't say what it's going to do to the common mirrors. I think that's a big deal, especially.
Those are birds, right?
Yeah, those are birds.
They're like the bird mirrors.
Yeah, and there's been 200 of them just die off right here. It was in the paper last week. So this is the common mirror section. And you can, again, like I said, put it in the EIS, search. Mirrors, I put common mirrors, I only got 1 page, and then I put just mirrors, and I got 3 pages. So there's 4 pages that reference it, and you can see it there. Here's the article. I sent it out to the people that were on the list, but this article it shows graphics of the Navy munitions and stuff. It was in the Seattle Times, and it's got some really good information. And if you want a copy of it, and you as I said, you can email me at ams@mcn.org, and I'll send you and I also have there's 2. I made 2 copies of that. As you can see, I'm really upset about all this too. And one of the things that I want to bring to people's attention, Thais talked about it earlier. The DOA, Department of Defense, has said that climate change is a national security issue. And Thais was talking about the Navy and national security and how they're doing this for our national security, and yet their studies and their data is old and our climate change is accelerating and accelerating and accelerating. You can look up what Thais was talking about in the Arctic, what's going on with the sea ice there, and how that's impacting. That's accelerating beyond what scientists have even imagined, how much that's melting. So you can pull in the DOA study on a statement that says climate change is a national security issue. And so they're doing national security. They're increasing climate change by everything that they're doing. So you can talk about that. I also printed up marine habitats. That's a really important section, and it gives you information on what they consider marine. I mean, I live right on the coast, and usually this time of year, I see at least 1 set, and lots of times 2 sets of mother and baby calves. I have not seen 1 this year so far. Not one. Not one. Mother and baby calf, gray whales. They come really close to the coast. I haven't seen any. I have one, I did get a CD if anybody wants it of the EIS. If you don't have good internet access, here's a CD, I'll leave that here. Also, the most important thing, one of the most important things is what Andy was talking about, the letter that he was reading. Intertribal Sinking Wilderness Coalition of Tribes, the 10 tribes, they have a request, call for public support of tribal comments on the Navy EIS. And it's just 1 page, and these are the things that the tribes would like you to include in your EIS comments. So I have 10 copies of it. I made 10 copies. You can email me again, and I'll send you a copy if there's not enough. But I made.
Is there a link to that?
No, I got it from Polly.
Oh, okay.
So, but there is. I can email you it. I have it online. Okay.
Also, if you give me your email address, I'll take a picture of it and I can give you the
Yeah,
picture.
okay. All right. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you all that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can. If you just email me, I have it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, folks, just some things again to highlight. Polly Garvin is a local indigenous leader who was speaking with her on the phone a lot about this recently. She said that when this report was written, there had not yet been all the news reports about whale die-off on the coast. So, the fact that we have new information should go in our comments, because then you should say, you need to do, Navy, you need to do another study, because we have new evidence that the whales are extremely stressed. It's a wildlife emergency.
Says NOAA.
Yeah,
That's
NOAA.
what's so important.
According to NOAA, right? So we have a wildlife emergency. This is new information since the writing of the report that we are commenting on. Therefore, they need to redo the report.
Yeah. And NOAA says they're doing a study to determine what's causing the die-off. So until that study's done, they can't do anything.
Right, so the common murre die-off and the whale die-off are both new news.
My question is, I don't know this is an informational meeting. Is anyone putting together an email list for everybody to get on an email together tonight to have a consensus? Are there any, not only city, but county, state organizations and national organizations currently involved, as well as legal help for putting together a consolidated statement for the Navy and the government? I think you need to get to that level if we're going to really do this. What has been done so far?
Nothing. Just this. Sure. Yeah, we can make a sign-up sheet.
Right. And I just want to say that comment about the wildlife emergency, that statement made by NOAA, May 31st. That's real, and any kind of testing and research and investigation right now that they're doing on gray whales. I just talked to I talked to several of the scientists currently doing that for NOAA, and they say that's going to take
years.
A while.
Years.
That is not going to be in a week or a month or even a year. This is going to have to be a study that is very deep, looking at the soil, looking at the bottom of the ocean, the food resources, the sonar, the sounds, the disorientation, the reproduction that's been disrupted. So I think that is a great thing to put in your letter, guys. NOAA says it. We have to have that research before you proceed.
Right.
So if you don't know anything and you're going, God, I don't know anything about sonar or anything else, we know that.
And again, it's a question. Will you wait until you get the result?
Or how are you going to work with NOAA to get that research done and inform the public as to what is going on, since this is a wildlife emergency? It cannot happen, and especially because we have a huge upwelling off our coast here in this area in Northern California. Yeah.
Here's a question. I was just wondering to everyone here, because Thais mentioned that the financial impact on the community seems like a really valid, important speaking point, and so I'm just wondering if folks here, if anyone's like representing hotels in the area, or if you know people who own hotels in the area and can like talk to them in the next week, But just something around getting that tourism representation on these public comments seems like super important, and I know, money talks, so, yeah, I just, maybe if you know anyone in that industry here, that would be really helpful.
Organize them. Get all the hotel owners to one place.
Yeah, that was a big deal, but we have like a few days, so I'm just like, if you know someone, go talk to them, and, yeah.
One of the other things that we're planning on doing is organizing some of the scientists' names who I mentioned. Fred Sharp, who's phenomenal whale scientist, has offered, he actually wants to come visit, as you could imagine, camp out in my backyard. And John Kalbakidis, if he can get away, is interested in coming. Michael Stalker's ready to come next week if we want him, the ocean noise specialist from Marin. Marcia Green said she'll fly out from Pennsylvania. So would people be interested in having different speakers and kind of an educational couple of months here? And then, of course, Scott Mercer and Tree Mercer, who he didn't get as much time as he could have had. They're also experts.
I need the pen. I need the pen.
Thais or maybe someone else know, if there was like scientific findings of like adverse effects, would there be any findings that would be enough to stop this? Like, do they even care about findings?
Yeah, we need a baseline. That's my feeling. And we need world-renowned scientists who we have here, as well as some of the other people I just mentioned. That's my feeling. I'm going to talk to you guys about that. We'll have lunch. And get funding to get them here so we can get a baseline on what the heck is going on in the Mendocino coast. And I need to also say several people from NOAA, including John Kalbakidis, said we here in Mendocino don't have a baseline. So how can they possibly be basing anything on our coastline? There just isn't enough information. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes, we have 6
Tree,
years
come on
of
over
data
here.
now.
This is so important. This is Tree Mercer.
Our study now, the Mendonoma whale and seal study, we have 6 years of data counting the gray whales every day that the weather and the ocean conditions allow us to. And so we have a pretty good database of 6 years. And if that can be useful, we would love to use it just to stop this terrible thing.
You're hired.
Oh, good. I want the job. Oh, we have a Facebook page called Mendonoma Whale and Seal Study. And every day it's updated with our sightings, not only of the gray whales, but any other whale species that we do see. Yes, that we can see. We are shore-based. So if you check that website every day, Mendonoma, it's a combination of the 2 counties, Mendocino and Sonoma counties. We have done some of our observations right here at the Mendocino Headlands. We go to various sites. What is it? Oh, it's a Facebook page. Yeah, it's a Facebook page.
I have a question. We talked about maybe using not only marine life but human life, and we have a huge diving community here. So I'm wondering, how does that impact actual human lives that are under the water, either scuba diving or free diving?
That's a great question.
Is there
We also have surfing here and surf riders here, as we know. I did some looking into that and have been speaking again to some colleagues about the effect of sonar on the eardrums and body. We have to remember that sonar does more than just rupture eardrums. It can create brain damage. It can actually shift the structure of the organs and create organ damage. I mean, it's intense. Look it up. So what does happen to human beings? Have they looked into that? We have a huge tourism based on that. We could say that. You know, our tourist economy. We are a small rural economy that depends on people who can come here and dive and surf. Yeah. Are you guys going to be researching that? Do you have research on that? I wrote something, public comments over there, and after each thing that I put out that was scientifically and evidence-based, I had a question in bold. And you might want to use that format.
Something real quick, folks, about the email signups. There are a few papers going around. We will make sure that we get everyone onto an email list together. What I would like to send out first on that list will be, I'll scan this letter that Anna Marie Stenberg brought. It says these are the things that the local tribes are requesting us to write comments about. And I will also include in there Thais's comments. I feel that those two are quite substantive and are good things to copy, both in content and style, like having the questions included and whatnot. So please put your email address on there. We have to meet again, right? This is not the end. This is more like the beginning, right? Yeah.
I just have one comment. Back in the day when the people were doing oil exploration and stuff, I flew out with what? I flew out and took video pictures of the boats, the ships that were out there doing the testing, and we managed to get their marine telephone numbers. Now this is a small point, but I put it on channel 3 at the time, on channel 6, channel 3, MSET, with the footage. I put the phone numbers on there, and people call them continuously and ask them questions directly on the ship. I can't overstress how important the Renomob is going to be. Getting people in boats out there, be safe. Publicizing phone numbers. People that can't get out in a boat can sit at home and call them and ask those questions directly to the people that are out there doing it, and jam their phone lines, and things like that too. Have meetings where you figure out other stuff like that to do. And whoever finds out the marine phone numbers first, publicize them all over the place. Paste them on the phone poles. Talk to the people at the print shops. They'll print them up for free. People with printers and computers do that. Spread the stuff all over the place, and people everybody can do something over and over again. Thank you. And thank you for.
It is 8 o'clock. It seems a lot of people have chosen to leave. If anyone else wants to speak, please do. Oh, a sign-up list for people with boats. No, we don't have one of those yet. But if you would like to note that on this sign-up list about emails, that's great. Yeah, good idea.
You saw what happened when up north when they had those flotillas, couldn't get their oil out because they were down in a little boat.
Yeah, wow. Little boats even, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of our things, just to reflect back. We've heard a lot about making comments, but also things we should do that were suggested. We're pushing legislation at all levels. Send your letter also to politicians. Protest in boats.
Direct action gets you good.
Greenpeace, I'm sure, is related to that. Yes, thank you all for coming. Get some scientific studies on the coast. We have, various things we should all do.
Would you recommend doing both email and paper copy, or just either one? That's a good question.
I don't have knowledge really to say, but the person who said paper comments are better has been involved for a long time, but also has responded to many things like this, but also he said he thinks that digital things get lost easier than paper things, and my first thought is I just can't imagine how paper doesn't also get lost if they want it to. So that was like his reasoning as to why to do paper, and I just have to wonder it. So yeah, both. I guess why not? You know? Yeah.
And talk to people